Okay. Commenting on this page, the historian Roy Porter noted that by the depicting man content to be content, differing but agreeing to different, the philosopher pointed towards a rethinking of the summum bonum, a shift from God-figureness to a selfhood more psychologically oriented. The Enlightenment thus translated the ultimate question, how can I be saved, into the pragmatic, how can I be happy, thereby heralding a new praxis of personal and social adjustment. The praxis include norms of property, thrift and self-restraint, and orientation toward the future rather than the past, and the conferral of dignity and prestige upon merchants and inventors rather than just on soldiers, priests and courtiers. Napoleon, the exponent of martial glory, sniffed England as a nation of shopkeepers, but at the time Britons earned 83% more than Frenchmen and enjoyed a third more calories, and we all know what happened at Waterloo. The Great Escape in Britain and the Netherlands was quickly followed by escapes in the Germanic states, in Nordic countries, and Britain colonial offshoots in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United States. In the theory that could only have been thought up by an assimilated German Jew, the sociologist Max Weber proposed in 1905 the capitalists depend on a Protestant ethic, but the Catholic countries of European soon zoomed out of poverty too. And succession of other escapes shown in figure 8 have put alight to various theories explaining by Buddhism, Confucianism, Hinduism, or generic Asian or Latin values were incompatible with the dynamic market economies. The non-British curves in figure 8 tell of a second astonishing chapter in the story of prosperity. Starting in the late 20th centuries, poor countries have been escaping from poverty in their turn. The Great Escape is becoming the Great Convergence. Countries that until recently were miserably poor have become comfortably rich, such as South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore. My Singaporean former mother-in-law recalls a childhood dinner at which her family split an egg four ways. Since 1995, 30 of the world's 109 developing countries, including countries as diverse as Bangladesh, El Salvador, Ethiopia, Georgia, Mongolia, Mozambique, Panama, Rwanda, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam, have enjoyed economic growth rates that amount to a doubling of income every 18 years. Another 40 countries have had rates that would double income every 35 years, which is comparable to the historical growth rate of the United States. It's remarkable enough to see that by 2008, China and India had the same per capita income that Sweden had in 1915 and 1920, respectively, but more remarkable still when we remember how many capitas this income was per 1.3 and 1.2 billion people. By 2008, the world's population, all 6.7 billion of them, had an average income equivalent to that of Western Europe in 1964. And no, it's not just because the rich are getting even richer. Thought, of course, they are a topic we will examine in the next chapter. Extreme poverty is being eradicated and the world is becoming middle class. The statistician Ola Rosling, hands-on, has displayed the worldwide distribution of income as histograms in which the height of the curve indicates the proportion of people at a given income level for 3 historical periods. In 80,000, at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, most people everywhere were poor. The average income was to that in the poorest countries in Africa today, about $50,000 a year in the international dollars, and almost 95% of the world lived in what counts today as extreme poverty, less than $1.90 a day. By the 1975, Europe and its offshoots had completed the Great Escape, leaving the rest of the world behind with 1/10 their income in the lower hump of a camel-shaped curve. In the 21st century, the camel has become a dromedary with a single hump shift to the right and a much lower tail on the left. The world had become richer and more equal. The slices to the left of the dotted line deserve their own picture. Shows the percentage of the world population that lives in extreme poverty. Admittedly, any cutoff for the condition must be arbitrary, but the United Nations and the World Bank do their best by combining the national poverty lines from a sample of developing countries, which are in turn based on the income of a typical family that managed to feed itself. In 1996, it was the alliterative $1 a day per person. Currently, it's set at $1.90 a day in 2011 international dollars. Curves with more generous cutoffs are higher and slower, but also skitter downward. Notice not just the shape of the curve, but how long it has sunk to 10%. In 200 years, the rate of extreme poverty in the world has taken from 90% to 10%, with almost half that decline occurring in the last 35 years. The world's progress can be appreciated in two ways. By one, recognizing the proportion and per capita rates I've been plotting are the morally relevant measure of progress because they fit with John Rawls' thought experience for defining a just society. Specify a world in which you would agree to be incarnated as a random citizen from behind the veil of ignorance as To that circumstance, a world with a higher percentage of long-lived, healthy, well-fed, well-off people is a world in which one would prefer to play the lottery of birth, but by another, recognizing absolute numbers matter too. Every additional long-lived, healthy, well-fed, well-off person is a sentient being capable of happiness, and the world is better placed for having more of them. Also, an increase in the number of people who can withstand the grind of entropy and the struggle of evolution is a testimonial to the sheer magnitude of the benevolent powers of science, markets, goods, government, and other modern institutions. In the stacked layered graph in figure 8.5, the thickness of the bottom slab represents the number of people living in extreme poverty. The thickness of the top slab represents the number not living in poverty, and the height of the stack represents the population of the world. It shows that the number of poor people declined just as the number of all people exploded. From 3.7 billion in 1970 to 7.3 billion in 2015, Max Rosser points out that if news outlets truly report the changing state of the world, they could have run the headline number of people in extreme poverty fell by 1,037 since yesterday every day for the last 25 years. We live in a world not just with a smaller proportion of extreme poor people, but with a smaller number of them, and with 6.6 billion people who are not extremely poor. Most surprises in history are unpleasant surprises, but this news came as pleasant shock even to the optimists. In 200,000, the United Nations laid out 8 Millennium Development Goals. Their starting lines backdated to 1990. At the time, cynical observers of that underperforming organization dismissed the targets as an aspirational boilerplate, cut the global poverty rate in half, lifting 1 billion people out of poverty in 25 years. Yeah, but the world reached the goal 5 years ahead of schedule. Development experts are still rubbing their eyes. Deaton writes, "This is perhaps the most important fact about well-being in the world since World War II. The economist Robert Lucas, like Deaton and Nobel laureate, said, the consequences for human welfare involved in understanding rapid economic development are simply staggering. Once one starts to think about them, it is hard to think about anything else. Let's not stop thinking about tomorrow. Thus, it's always dangerous to extrapolate a historical curve. What happens when we try? If we align a ruler with a World Bank data figure, we find that it crosses the x-axis, indicating a poverty rate of 0 in 2026, the United Nations gave itself a concussion in its 2015 Sustainable Development Goals. The successor to its Millennium Development Goals and set the target of ending extreme poverty for all people everywhere by 2030. Ending extreme poverty for all people everywhere. May I live to see the day. Not even Jesus was the optimistic he told a supplicant. The poor you will always have with you.